welcome to the session today on what should you be posting right now on Instagram. When we planned the topic of this webinar, I don't think we realised quite how topical it would be and quite how many changes would be made on Instagram over recent months. So we're quite grateful for the timing of this because it feels like we could all do with a bit of a check-in as to what we should be posting. So let's take a quick look at what we're going to be exploring in today's session. So first, we're going to have a quick look at some of the recent changes to Instagram so that we can kind of get an understanding of the platform that we're posting on. We're then going to take a deep dive into Reels, Stories, Lives, and image content. We're then going to have a Q&A, so there'll be a chance for you to ask any questions that pop up throughout the webinar. And then we are going to summarise with some takeaways. But first, I thought it'd be good to introduce HdK. I know that some of you are aware of us already, but some of you might not be. We are a holistic marketing agency, and we specialise in working with arts, cultural and non-profit organisations. We have 3 dedicated teams, a web team, a support team and a marketing team. So we build websites, we provide ongoing website support, and we have a marketing team that deliver full-scale marketing campaigns for tours and organisations. And we turn ideas into realities online so that artists can impact people's lives. So that's a very quick introduction to HdK. And it's also an opportunity to introduce ourselves. So I'm Phoebe, I'm HdK's client relationship manager, and I work with all of our clients to establish the best possible solutions to their needs, whether it's a website, a small campaign, advertising, etc. And then I hand over to the lovely web and marketing team. So I'll leave Meg and Ali to introduce themselves.
Hi, thank you, Phoebe. Lovely to see you all. My name's Meg. I'm marketing manager at HdK. So like Phoebe said, work across all of our marketing campaigns and some web campaigns as well to deliver excellent marketing services in the arts and cultural sector.
Hi everyone, I'm Ali. I'm the marketing assistant. So I work alongside Meg across all of our clients and projects. And yeah, work across some web projects too.
Great, thank you both. Okay, so first we're going to kick off with, as I said, just an overview of the recent changes. It's Instagram now, today, is a far cry from the Instagram that we knew, or some of us knew in 2010. Not all of us will have been on the platform then. Instead of seeing friends' photo posts and kind of personal moments, we're now seeing much more recommended content from people we don't know, Instagram Reels, and a lot more ads. And the platform's changes reflect the many significant changes in how we use social media today. And it'd be good to actually know how confident people are feeling about using the platform at the moment. So let's just do a quick poll in the chat. So if you could comment, how confident do you feel using Instagram right now on a scale of 1 to 5? So 1 being not at all confident and 5 being totally confident. We'll just have a look at what the general consensus is right now. Okay, lots of 3s, some 1s, 2s, 4s. Hopefully we won't undo that, Kelly. We don't want to make you feel less confident. Ted, 1. So it feels like there's quite a range, to be honest. And I suppose that is dependent on how much time you're able to dedicate to the platform, how much of a priority it is for you as an organisation. There's, you know, I completely understand why people might not feel confident, but hopefully in today's session we can start to change that a little bit. So first, let's just have a look at the recent changes to the platform. So recommended content. This refers to the posts that appear on your Instagram feed by people you don't know or follow. A lot of them are reels. And how this works is that Instagram's algorithm observes the content that you interact with and shows you more of it. The head of Instagram, Adam Mosseri, has said that this is to help creators by putting their content in front of people who don't already follow them. Instagram has faced a lot of backlash from users for adding recommended content to feeds, and they did temporarily pause these changes, but it's definitely still happening. And to kind of mitigate those complaints, they've now introduced some recommendation guidelines so that they can have a bit more control over what kinds of content get recommended to people. And the guidelines are relatively straightforward, but we'll share a link to those at the end of the session. Any of the resources that we mentioned today, we're going to share as links at the end, so you can copy and paste them and look at whichever ones you're interested in. And for organizations, recommended content can actually be quite positive. It can help build awareness, expand your audiences. But of course, we also need to make sure that our followers are seeing the content that we share, which is a bit more difficult at the moment. So how do we make the most of this change with more recommended content? We can do what we can to improve our chances of content being recommended. So have a look at Instagram's guidelines, make sure you understand them and that everything you post complies. If you have any budget available, factor some in for your key campaign posts to make sure that your target audiences are seeing them. And closely track your analytics and learn what resonates with your audiences so that you can increase your engagement organically. Instagram also shared that they're testing a feature that allows users to mark multiple posts at a time as not interested, which means greater user control, great for a user experience, but it's all the more reason to just pay attention to what your audiences do and don't like. And we'll share the article about this at the end of the session. There's also been lots of updates to Reels, which I'm sure a lot of us are using at the minute. And that's certainly a positive because Instagram is incredibly committed to making short form video work on the platform. So let's have a quick look at some of the latest updates to Reels. So all video content shared on the platform is now shared as Reels. So when you're creating video content, it's best to make sure that you edit a version that is optimized for Reels. You can also access suggested Reels templates, which is really helpful because it can help you more easily participate in current trends. And you can also make Reels remixes. So take a photo and easily create a reel from photos, which is great. They've also introduced an Add Yours sticker. So it might be familiar to some of you. It's a sticker that was used on stories. There was one going around initially that was, share a baby photo of you and you kind of add yours to that trend. They were only available on stories, but now they've been added to Reels. And this is to help encourage trends and make sure that people that start trends get the credit. And finally, cross-posting. You can now cross-post Reels from Instagram to Facebook, which also now has improved insights so that when you do post them on Facebook, you can understand how they perform, which is great. I'd really recommend following Adam Mosseri on Instagram. He shares Reels explaining Instagram's major updates and then links to more in-depth articles. So I highly recommend that, and we'll share a link to his profile at the end. Some updates to stories recently. So Instagram is testing a feature called Candid Challenges. And some of you might have heard of Be Real, but if not, it's a kind of new social media platform where users post one photo a day of themselves, and it rejects the kind of curated and polished ideals that we see on other platforms and encourages people to just be real, be themselves, and embrace the reality of the mundane. And so kind of in response to that explosion in popularity, Instagram is testing candid challenges on stories. So users will get a notification to share one photo via stories every day of what they're up to. So what does this mean for organizations? How can we use this to our advantage? So it reflects a wider shift towards real and human content. It tells us it's just not enough anymore to, you know, promote your productions, products, activity, etc. People want to connect with other people. So we have to get creative and figure out ways to inject the faces behind our organizations into our social media presence. For example, you could get the team involved in Reels, or with Candid Challenges, share snapshots from behind the scenes every day. And we'll share some resources on this at the end. With photo posts, in a recent Ask Me Anything session on his Instagram stories, head of Instagram, Adam Masseri, acknowledged that the platform has gone too far with video, but photography still has a place on the platform. Unlike all of his other updates, though, he didn't actually quantify that with plans to make sure that they can succeed still. So we're kind of left to our own devices. Bearing in mind what we do know, there are a number of ways that you can improve your chances of your photo post performing well. And we're going to look at some of these in more detail today. So yeah, this brings me to the end of our kind of overview of updates. And I'm sure this might have introduced some new ideas and generated some questions already, but we're going to have a Q&A session at the end, and hopefully we can answer anybody's questions. So first of all, we are going to have a look at Reels. I'll hand over to Meg.
Thank you, Phoebe. Thanks. So I don't know about you, but with that all in mind, the rapid changes in social media can sometimes feel quite disheartening. I think something that we are really enjoying as a company is these webinars really already are kind of serving as time capsules into a certain period in time when certain things were true for platforms. And while what we are going to walk through today is going to be as timely as possible, as we can possibly make it, changes are going to continue to happen. So with that in mind, let's just have a look at some of the recent changes and what we can do to be embracing them. So recently, Instagram announced a deliberate move towards Reels. We used to scroll through Instagram and see photos, and since Instagram's arrival on the digital scene in 2010, this was a big part of its attraction. I suspect a big reason for this shift towards video content is an endeavor to follow suit in TikTok's scrolling For You page style success. But why though? So publications like Psychology Today and the Harvard Business Review have recently published pieces on the psychology behind scrolling. So when we scroll through our feeds, switching between content very quickly, our brain actually gets a hit of dopamine every time. So this creates a neurological high. Much like drugs or gambling, this rush does create an addiction, which does keep you scrolling through content. So as much as we like to say, oh, young people and their phones, there's a lot of psychology and science behind it, which is keeping us literally locked to our phones. So British athlete Steve Backley said, embrace change, look out for opportunities, and you will feel much more in control. I've been telling myself that a lot recently with Instagram's updates. So we'll just walk through a few of the benefits now from using Reels. So Reels are fairly easy to use. There are a variety of options, so we can upload previous footage, you can directly record into the app. Much like TikTok, it does mean that the possibilities for creating content are somewhat endless. You also have a draft option for creating and preparing content, which I find really useful. It's great news for those of us who aren't able to create a polished piece of content in one sitting, or would like to stay ahead of the curve and create little bits of content and add to it later. It also makes a sign-off process much easier if you have people within your organization who are creating content and someone like a marketing manager needs to look at it before it goes out. The draft option is really useful for that. We also have a number of options for video testing, clipping to test effects and timing. Really on your phone, it does feel like you're a little video editor, which is fab. And all of this effort does, according to Instagram, mean that our content is performing better. So Reels do receive 22% more engagement than regular Instagram video posts. Jumping straight into some top tips then, so that you can take away as many things from today as possible. Our favorite free editing software is CapCut, that I know many of us in the room will probably be using or have had experience in. It's a phone app, it's free. It's really great with little features like you can speed up content, you can slow it down, you can reverse it, you can really easily chop things, add audio to different pieces of video. It's a really nice and compact way to edit videos in portrait mode for Instagram Reels and for TikTok. With Instagram Reels, be sure to balance your trending content with micro vlogging content. So Instagram Reels are a great opportunity to be showing aspects of your organization that you might not be able to show in a regular Instagram post or video. So even if it's just cutting together pieces of video from your day and adding a voiceover at the end to explain what you're doing. It is definitely worth considering creating and editing your content in portrait mode from now on. So that's 1080 by 1920, if you are able to do so. Obviously, Instagram did move towards all of the videos on the platform being Reels recently. So purely from a, well, I mean, I suppose there are two reasons. One being aesthetic, it looks much better if you do create content in portrait mode. And the other being that the app will favor your content and push it through the algorithm if you create content that fits their style. Another thing to bear in mind is that Instagram Reels do benefit from on-screen text and subtitles. So make sure to use those features in the app and not add them beforehand. You can add captions on something like CapCut and then repost it on Instagram. That's no bad thing, but what we would say not to do is don't republish your content from TikTok onto Instagram Reels. It looks messy, and Instagram, as soon as they see a little TikTok logo, aren't going to want to have anything to do with it. That's the competitive nature of social media, I guess. And lastly, with hashtags, I know we did get a question submitted about hashtags, which of course we will get to later on in the session, but around 3 to 5 relevant hashtags will help the algorithm pinpoint your content and know which audiences it should be shared to. We've got a really useful tool, Influencer Marketing Hub's hashtag generator tool, which we will share at the end of the session in the chat as well. So do go and check that out if you're looking for some inspiration for your hashtags. So a few examples of some organizations using Reels really well are the National Gallery, National Youth Theatre, the Globe and the Mayflower Theatre. There are a number of arts organizations using Reels really well at the moment. And these are just a few recently that we've seen. So the National Gallery had a really nice content strand, picture of the month. You can see all of these videos are portrait as well. The National Youth Theatre is very much led by young voices, so it does have that really conversational tone to it. The Globe have adapted really quickly and really effectively to marketing their content in this portrait format. And the Mayflower Theatre have a lovely balance between microblogging content and trending content as well, as seen in this example here. We have given this advice a lot, but the best thing to do is to jump on the app itself and do some research, looking up your favorite theatres, looking up your favorite galleries. Is anyone using it? Who's using it? Are people testing the waters a bit? What kind of inspiration can you get? So do reframe this idea of mindless scrolling and not working as you're doing a peer analysis. You know, spend some time on the app and work out what everyone else is doing. And how you can use their ideas and also contribute to the kind of culture that we want to put out there of sharing our content and keeping up to date with each other. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass over to Ali, who will be covering stories.
Thanks, Meg. So as we've kind of, we've discussed already that Instagram has been evolving quite rapidly. And I think quite often brands can lose sight of the differences between some of the functions, particularly with grid posts and stories. And there's a tendency to not always use the differing qualities of the two to your best advantage. So a good way to think of it is like this. Imagine your Instagram is like a shop. Your grid is the attractive shop window. It grabs people's attention, it shows them glimpses of your products and invites them in. Meanwhile, stories are the personal touches inside the shop, such as a seller who knows you by name, lets you know early about new collections and sales, and spends time getting to know what products you specifically like. These are the things that keep people buying and returning. So the grid is there to attract people into the shop, and then the stories are there to keep them buying, keep them coming back. So I think with this in mind, stories really are the best place to build personal connections with your audience and get to know their likes and dislikes. But before we get further into that, let's go over a couple of best practices for the function. So generally people tune into stories on a daily basis far more often than posts. So we would recommend for optimal story frequency to post daily or every other day if possible. And looking at recent statistics, posting up to 5 stories in a day retains an average retention rate of over 70%. So with this in mind, we'd recommend the day-to-day posting to keep it within 5 stories, of course, unless you have a large event that it's happening that day and you're covering. The next one is to use location tags. So again, data shows that including a location tag in your story can increase your engagement rate by 79%. So these could be really, really useful to get audiences local to come to whatever event or whatever you have on offer. And lastly, include important links in your stories. You might remember that a profile used to need over 10,000 followers to have access to the swipe up for a link function. Those days are now long gone, and you can include links in any story you want to, regardless of how many followers you have. And data also shows that 67% of users are likely to click on a link from stories. So these can be really useful to signpost your what's on page or a recent event, anything like that, straight in the story, and people can go straight there. So moving on, there are 3 main things that Instagram stories are really, really powerful for. That is personal connection, audience insights, and collaboration. So starting with personal connection, Instagram stories allow you to lean into the human side of your brand. People don't tend to want to hear from a brand. They want to hear from people and connect with the humans behind a brand. And the temporary 24-hour nature of stories allows you to post more relaxed, candid, kind of day-to-day content that speaks to your followers. And functions like the create mode allows you to use polls, ask questions, and post audiences' replies, create emoji reactions to your stories, and more. All of these can help create a more interactive page that fosters, a kind of sense of dedicated community. And so this also feeds into the real and second advantage of stories, which is audience insights. Utilizing the casual sort of micro-blogging nature of stories can be an extremely useful way to gain insights into your audience's sentiments, to gathering feedback, and to also share functional information, as we've discussed, such as events or product releases. So a really great way to use stories to your best advantage is to use it as a way to both, chat and bond with your audience, but as well as gaining really detailed qualitative data that you might not be able to get elsewhere. So let's look at a couple of examples of these two elements in action. So the sustainable fashion brand, We Are Tala, uses stories very often, whether it's creating countdown stickers for product launches, which people can click and add to their calendar alerts, or to tease out new products. In this example, they created a set of polished stories that respond directly to their audiences through asking, through a poll asking questions. So in the first one, they asked, what is most important to you, planet or people, in line with their brand being sustainable. They then shared the audience response, which was planet, to which out they set another poll where they're asking, would people like to know more about product circularity or reducing our environmental impact? And you can see 76% of these people voted to hear more about reducing environmental impact, to which they then opened up a Q&A box for their audience to ask specific questions, which can then be shared with the answers on their stories, as they come through. And finally, in their third story, they asked their audience to share any happy news that their audience had. So, and then they shared those responses in a large grid. So things like people were saying, my cousin got engaged, or I got a job offer in Australia, or my Tala order is on its way. And small things like this can do wonders for engagement and particularly creating brand loyalty. If people feel that they're being listened to and that they're part of a community, and they can find other people to talk to there, you're really going to create some dedicated followers. However, your stories don't have to look as polished as these ones. For example, here, an independent bookshop just used a simple poll to gather data on who would be joining their event. And in this one next to it, we have a story from Mob Kitchen that shows just a simple picture of their new cookbook, and they've scribbled out one of the ingredients, and they're asking ingredients, and they're asking their audience to just guess the missing ingredient. Simple things like that can really allow people to just tune in, join in, and get excited about whatever you've got on offer. And so just quickly, before I hand over to Meg to go over Instagram Live, I want to just highlight the strong advantage of brand and influencer collaborations that story also have to offer. So coming back to this idea of collaboration, influencer presences tend to be highly curated. So collaborating on their stories can provide direct access to their audiences in a way that feels more authentic and natural. And in fact, the average number of feed posts by influencers has declined every year since stories were introduced in 2016. So declining from an average of 3.3 posts in 2016 to now just 2.3 in 2020. So this indicates a sharp move away from regularly posting on your grid permanently to just quick, simple daily shares on stories. So with that in mind, I'll hand over to Meg.
Thank you, Ali. Great. So we have talked about the importance of videos today, of course, but as technology continues to progress, it isn't going to stop there. So a natural progression for this in the now is live streaming. So in today's context, we'll be talking about Instagram Live. As we move towards immersive, interactive, participatory digital spaces, aka the anticipated or dreaded metaverse, Instagram Live is a great way to sort of be bridging that gap between creating in-person experiences and then creating live digital experiences. According to Hootsuite in January 2022, 80% of audiences would rather watch a live stream than read a blog post. That's a pretty significant statistic. So 80% of audiences would rather watch a live stream than read a blog post. So jumping straight in then, some uses of live streams for arts and cultural organisations. They are very varied, but we'll start with a few of them. Live stream your opening night. You can also live stream a launch event. Discussions and talks, so panel events or in-person interviews. Or walk through a specific space. So for instance, you could create buzz around We are going live at 3 p.m. on Thursday to walk around our brand new exhibition space with our resident curator. So get ready to ask your questions. You can also do something like a tour of the building. So introducing your audiences to behind the scenes of your organization, whether you are a gallery, a museum, a theatre, an agency, a space station, or otherwise. And lastly, get ready with us. So things like actors in a dressing room, decent, of course, walking through their makeup routine and chatting with audience members who are on the live, asking questions in real time. Just a couple of examples of these then. So recently we ran an Instagram live from the dressing room at the Peacock Theatre with the Trocs, otherwise known as Les Ballets Trocadero de Monte Carlo. For those of you who don't know, they are a New York-based comedy male drag ballet company. They are absolutely fantastic. And on the opening night of their tour, we interviewed dancer Josh Thake. Very, very quick Instagram live, sort of 4 or 5 minutes, just in the dressing room, going through some opening night nerves, some questions about the pieces that they'd be performing, how it feels to be back in the UK, and a little bit of a tour around the dressing room. There were some fun wigs and things. And we found that that worked really, really well. What was great about that one is that it was short enough for it to be reposted as content too later on. So what we had, it was a little bit makeshift, was one phone with the live stream on it, and then another phone right next to that recording just on camera video. So we had some high quality or higher quality visuals for later on as well, and we could just use the audio from the live. Another example is Norwich Theatre Royal. So they recently ran a live stream with Carlos Acosta surrounding his performance of On Before. So this was a conversation with Chief Exec Stephen Crocker and Carlos himself, a very relaxed, casual conversation in a rehearsal space with people asking questions in real time and them answering them. So a few quick tips then on how to run a successful live. Firstly, get the right equipment. So that could literally just be a charged iPhone. Emphasis on charged, because we have a couple of times forgotten to make sure we are fully charged before a live stream. Alternatively, it could be things like a gimbal, a wireless microphone, a tripod, some lighting equipment, and so on. There are a number of different things you can get for live streams, and they are great at working for each live stream, so you can invest in them and the return on investment will be worth it. Things like microphones can be really affordable. You can get them from Amazon. I think you can look at a really good wireless sort of social media style microphone for sort of £30. So you can have some really fantastic equipment that has longevity as well. Think about the lead up to the event. So do you want to create some noise around it? Do you want to do an Instagram post saying tomorrow we're going to go live? Think about your questions. Or do you just want to surprise people and go live? There's no right answer there. Next, test your tech, even if it is just testing the sound on your phone before an event. Make sure that you test things through even just before. And also you can test a million times, but be prepared for things to go wrong. So I would say have someone in front of the camera or someone at least there who feels comfortable improvising if things do go awry, which they sometimes do. And lastly, just go for it. There is no harm in trying. Go live. If you hate it and it doesn't work for you, you never have to do it again. But there is no harm in giving it a go and seeing if it works for you and for your audience. So I know we have had a lot of content today. We are going to take a super quick pause here before we move on to Ali's next section. So we would love to take this opportunity to ask you to follow the link that Ali is about to pop in the chat. We will pause here for just a couple of minutes. If you're able to follow the link and fill out the questions, it should only take 2 minutes. That would be fantastic. It really helps us in making these sessions as relevant and as useful as we possibly can. Sorry, just letting in some other people into the waiting room. That would be fantastic. So we will pause here. Please follow the link that Ali has just popped in the chat, and we will get started in a couple of minutes. I was going to play some sort of elevator music, but we're recording the session, so I didn't want to get pulled up for music rights. But just imagine there's some chill music going on right now. That's brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. That link will continue to work, so do feel free to return to it or finish it later if you haven't already. Christina's just popped a question in the chat, which does remind me, if you do have any questions at any point, please feel free to pop them in the chat, and we will come to them at the end of the session. Thank you very much for bearing with us and staying engaged this morning. I will pass over to Ali now, and then we are on our way to the Q&A session today.
Thanks, Meg. Hi, everyone. So yeah, as we've kind of already touched on earlier on in the session, your permanent posts on the grid are where you can show off your best assets and your visual identity as a brand. And it can often be useful for this area to be more polished, a bit more curated, and include a mix of high quality images. However, it is also always important to consider, what do you want to communicate to your audiences? What is your top priority in your shop window? Your grid is where you can put your most important information, and your stories is kind of where you can shout about it. So your image posts don't need to be perfect, but they should be cohesive and have a sense of identity and consistency running across your grid. With this said, I cannot stress enough not to fall down the hole of creating a picture wall with 6 individual posts that make up one composite image from the grid. These often kill engagement and aren't typically conducive to conveying anything extra to your audiences. And I think in 2022, we've moved on. So I'll just say that there. So how do I create an Instagram grid that conveys my organization's identity, looks cohesive, and shares important information? So I'm going to share some tips with you on color blocking, signposting, and the rule of 3. So a great way to curate your grid without necessarily having to deeply analyze your entire asset bank is color blocking. Now this can be going through posting images that feature only the same colors, or a more practical approach is to select images within a 9 to 12 post range that feature similar and complementary tones. So let's have a look at an example. Here we have the Instagram page of Romba Dance. And as you can see, not every image is, all pink or purple, but there's a color theme that's running through the grid, and creating this kind of sense of visual synergy. You can see the tones sort of mapping their way through, creating this nice trace of consistency. And this is really effective for creating a visually appealing and intriguing window into your organization. As we know, Instagram is a lot about the visual and the look. And so it can also be helpful to think about the rule of 3 when planning color coordinated Instagram posts. As we know, the grid works on a 3-square basis. So for example, if you have 2 assets, of the same sort of, I don't know, bright yellow and red text posted on day 1 and day 3. They'll have a nice space in between for a post of another color. However, if you post them on day 1 and day 4, you might end up with an unfortunate stacking situation where you'll find your colors stuck down one line of the grid instead of them nicely dispersed across. So that's something to bear in mind if you're going for a color blocking approach. So let's look at another example that shows color blocking in practice, as well as really clear information signposting. So this is a section of Greenwich and Docklands International Festivals grid. And as you can see, there's a nice selection of kind of tonally similar images featuring warm and complementary colors. They're not in every image, but it's enough to create a sense of consistency and visual appeal. And what GDIF does really well is signposting. So as you can see where we've marked out some white boxes, just a simple scan of the page and you can see the GDIF 2022 trailer, a post about volunteering, and intriguing event titles, all of which are using consistent font and graphics. This not only looks good, but it makes it as easy as possible for a user to instantly see where the most relevant pieces of information are, making them more likely to click on the post and engage with the page as a whole. You know, they can find whatever they're looking for, or maybe they're not even looking for it, but they know where they want to click instantly. Now, all of this might sound a little overwhelming in terms of dedicated planning for just one platform, and that is where scheduling systems can be really helpful. Later is a great app for both planning your grid and scheduling stories. While its free plans are a bit more limited than its paid offerings, it's very in tune with the unique qualities of Instagram. And so if Instagram is a platform that you really want to work on, looking into later might be worth it. Alternatively, systems like Hootsuite allow you to draft your posts and see a calendar preview in the content section. And here you can just review how the pictures look together and decide if you want to move them around. And I know that Meg and Phoebe have already kind of gone over the changes to Instagram and its push for Reels. But I just want to add that as we know that this is what's doing best on the platform at the moment, in the meantime, utilizing your video content is a smart move to take advantage of the current algorithm. So perhaps bear this in mind when mapping out your grid or mapping out your posts, that any video assets you have could be a really good opportunity to use right now. So I think we've got time for our Q&A now.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ali, and thank you, Meg, for the information that you shared on all of the different ways of posting on Instagram at the minute. And I'm conscious that we've covered quite a lot today. We've had a fair few questions come in already, so thank you so much for staying engaged. We had a pre-submitted question for today's session, so I think we're going to very quickly answer that one first, and then we'll go through as many of the questions as we can get to today. So the first question is, let me just read this out very quickly. So for hashtags on TikTok, I choose relevant ones with less than 1 million views or even under 100K, and avoid using generic hashtags like hashtag FYP or For You page to ensure that I'm targeting niche audiences who will engage. How do these figures compare on Instagram? What's the ideal total range of total users of hashtags to optimize my Instagram? Yeah, so a little question about how many hashtags we should be using on the platform. And I know that Meg and Ali have some ideas on this, so I'll hand over to them to answer.
Yeah, so for hashtags, recent sort of data states that over 10 hashtags starts to decrease engagement with them. So we'd probably say between 5 and 10 is a good amount. And in terms of what kinds of hashtags, I'd say 2 to 3 generic ones, maybe with a slightly larger following, and then going for like 3 to 5 niche ones. As I said earlier, using a location tag improves engagement by 79%. So for example, wherever you're located, maybe the name of a project or the show, an exhibition, things like that, slightly more niche. But also it's important to remember that hashtags aren't going to be the sole reason for success. So don't feel too disheartened about them. And I think focusing on the content first is the best approach. I don't know if Meg has anything to add to that one.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. As the platform develops, I think hashtags are becoming less and less key to the platform itself and more like signposts for the algorithm to work out which chute to push your content down. So in my research for Reels, between 3 and 5 hashtags was consistently coming up as the best thing to use. Any more than that, and it kind of clogs Instagram's algorithm and they don't really know what to do with it. So fewer, more targeted hashtags are your best chance for success, we think. We've also got the tool that we mentioned earlier, which we'll pop in the chat, which are great for research as well.
Great, thank you both. Great, so we've got some questions still coming in now, so I think let's start to have a quick look at the questions in the chat box. I think first of all, let's have a look at Layla's question. So do Instagram Lives benefit followers only? Do they have any impact on reach, like Reels reaching audiences that you don't yet follow? So I've got a couple of ideas on this one, and then I'll open it up to Meg and Ali. Also, if anybody has any answers to the questions that are being asked, please do respond in the chat or turn your microphone on. These webinars are a good opportunity for organizations to kind of share their knowledge in like a, you know, an open, safe space for discussion. So the impact of lives is, I've got 2 kind of points in response to this. So when you go live, Instagram notifies users that you have gone live and pushes it to the front of everyone's feed. So while it doesn't necessarily reach people beyond your followers, it's more likely to reach more of your followers than a kind of normal post. A way to increase the reach of Instagram Lives is to do joint lives with people that you're partnered with. Perhaps it's a company that is coming to your venue, perhaps it's an artist that's in residency. That's a really effective way of expanding the reach of your lives, because you can then also access their audiences. I don't know if you guys have any more thoughts on this question?
Just to bring in a little bit more on lives in general, I think a really useful tip, it obviously depends on your organization. If it's a big organization and you need a lot of lead time and planning time, I would say go for a midday-ish, around lunchtime live on a weekday, or later on in the evening if you have the sort of resources to do so. And another fab, I'm wondering if I can show on my actual phone. We'll see ourselves when we do this, but if you go into your phone itself and then swipe to this sort of page you get when you can see. If you click on live at the bottom, it will actually show you at the top how many of your followers are currently active. So if you can maybe set yourself a reminder to, in the morning, midday, and then evening, to check that number over a number of days, you'll work out quite quickly when your followers are most likely to be online. If there's a massive difference between, say, midday and evening, then it's absolutely worth acting on that and working it into your plan for lives. So that's just a little tip that we found useful recently. Sorry to sort of veer the conversation away from that question, but just trying to get to as many of these questions as possible. They're fantastic. Very quickly as well, we will be going through these questions properly and putting together some longer responses in a PDF that we'll put on our website as well. So if we don't get to all of the questions today, no worries at all, we will answer them. Back to you, Phoebe.
Thank you. And I think that answers Ellen's question about, is there a best time to do Instagram Lives? Another way is to go into your insights and look at when your followers are most active, and using Meg's suggestion, and that hopefully you'll get a better sense of when's best for you in your organization to go live. A really good question from Kirsty. So my organization has multiple Instagram accounts for each of our projects. What advice do you have on creating reels and Instagram content that feels distinctive to each project whilst remaining holistic to the parent organization? So my thoughts on this are that one of the first things that you can do, if you haven't already, is establish a kind of brand tone of voice for the platform. So we like to put together kind of 5 or 6 voice characteristics that we want to achieve with each of our posts on Instagram, and that doesn't necessarily have to be in the captions you write. It can also be in the tone of the content that you share. And so creating a sense of organizational consistency across your various accounts, that kind of tone of voice reflects your organization's personality and creates a bit more consistency when you're posting about lots of different things. Another thing that you can do is kind of, obviously we're moving away from over stylized content, but with the kind of very small things that the way that you edit, the way that you add your captions, the kind of colors that you use, you can create a bit of a visual consistency that can bring your brand and your various projects together. What about you guys? Any more thoughts on this?
I think there are some really nice easy visual tools as well that you can add to your posts, whether it is a very small logo of your overall organization in the corner, or it's a nice little visual graphic. Perhaps even it's something as simple as you use the same color for the captions on every reels. And by captions, I mean subtitles, sorry, in the videos themselves. That can provide a really nice sort of overall organization brand visual identity. A number of other small things that you can try through the reels. I would say if your overall goal is to making all of those little pockets of projects still speak to your organization, then something small that is visual is going to be really useful.
Great. And then Lily's question, is there still much purpose to curating Instagram highlights on your page? I think this is a really good question, and this is something that we've been looking at with some of our clients recently. And I don't know if Ali, you want to answer this one. It's, I'm thinking about how highlights can be a really helpful way of people quickly accessing specific information. And I know that that's something that you've looked at.
Yeah, I think you don't need to put too much of your time and dedication into it, but I think that there is still purpose. For example, if you look at a page and all of the highlights covers look visually, they're standardized, they're all the same cover and they've got a different text or something, it's quite easy for people to just quickly go and get like a very quick snapshot of the brand. If they're a new user, they're not following you and they kind of just want to figure out what you're about, what your organization is about. I think highlights can be a really kind of useful way to do that and to find really key information. So, events, what's on, about us, things like that, that people don't have to scroll and look for it. They can just tap through. So I think there definitely is purpose to it. And I think that having a nice cover across each of them, all using consistent branding and logos and stuff to make it as simple, as clear as possible is the best idea. But I don't think you need to put, too much time into it.
I think also just to add to that, Ali, I think this is true for all of the effects and elements on Instagram. If you are having fun with it as an organization and you're kind of breathing your organization's value into your Instagram, whether it's the feed, whether it's using fun highlights or using stories, that will really come across to your audience. So if using highlights feels natural to you and is something that you want to, showcase some really fantastic things that have been going on, it's definitely worth having. Yes. Sorry, back to Phoebe.
Thank you. I think let's have a go at very quickly answering 2 of these questions in one. and then we'll wrap up quickly. As Meg said, we're going to be answering all of the questions properly. And then later this week, when they've been uploaded to the website, I'll be emailing you all to let you know. There'll also be the recording. So if you want to kind of go over any questions that we whizzed through, then please feel free to do so. So a couple of these questions are about boosting engagement. So one from Alice, one from Phoebe. Hello, fellow Phoebe, it's always nice to meet them. So Alice asked, in terms of grid posts, is there any difference in engagement between photos and graphics, or a combination of image and text? And then Phoebe asked, does engaging in other accounts, stories, or pages boost your own reach? So I think let's maybe try and answer that one all together. And I think when it comes to grid posts and photos and graphics, so kind of more text heavy images, you know, Instagram's more and more, and it has been for a little while, to be honest, moving away from any content that doesn't feature a face or doesn't feature people, or at least an animal's face. Let's be honest, dogs and cats feature a lot on the platform as well. So I think there is, the algorithm recognizes images with faces in, images with people in, and they are much more likely to perform well within Instagram's algorithm. That said, obviously, I know that in terms of branding, it can be helpful to use some kind of graphical content, some content with text over it. And I think to understand how that works for your organization, because there are some accounts that still do it and still work really well, I think it's a case of testing them out and seeing which formats perform the best. And to answer Phoebe's question very quickly, does engaging in other account stories boost your own algorithm reach? Absolutely, yes. The more you interact with other pages, the more people interact with you, and the rapidity that people interact with a post that you share will determine how far that gets pushed onto people's feeds. So the more you encourage that interaction, the better. I am going to move on now. I'm really sorry that we've had to kind of rush through the questions somewhat, but thank you so much for all of your questions. It's been really great to kind of understand where our kind of peers are at on the platform right now. If you have enjoyed this webinar, or you would like to come along to another of HdK's webinars, we do them every month on a different marketing topic. And in October, we're looking at the dreaded NFTs. We're looking at how to use NFTs as an arts organization, hopefully demystifying that a little bit for you. In November, how to create engaging image and video content in-house, which would be a nice kind of follow-up session from this. And then our usual yearly wrap up and look ahead to the next year. So we will share some of our predicted website and digital marketing trends for 2023 in December's session. We also have a quarterly newsletter that we send once every 3 months, and we feature marketing tips and insights, anything that we've learned as an agency, working with all of our clients across arts, culture, heritage, non-profit sectors. So it's, you know, all of our shared learning from that, some recent case studies, and just a little team update, what we're up to. But just to say thank you so much for coming along today. It's always great